Hello from me, Lazarus. We continue with the next lesson from the HTML course. But just before we look at it, I want to tell you that I already did your English YouTube channels, in the sense that I started working on them, and I have already uploaded 12 videos, in both your Lazarus IDE channel and your HTML channel. I also made a slight change to the site. Here I left my YouTube channel in Bulgarian, and here I made a connection to my YouTube channel in English. If we open it, we see my English YouTube channel. So now we're down to 8th chapter of the book. HTML elements related to text formatting. We open the PDF file. Now first to say that this is a very big one and bulky head, that's why we're going to break this tutorial down in several parts. Text is the most important part of a web page, and so we will start from it. When looking at the items, which are placed in the body of the document, should be considered that much of the elements, tags, the text description and formatting attributes, according to the new standards since version 4 of HTML, and in HTML5.2, not supported. And they should not be used in the body of the HTML document. And for this purpose, it should to be used only formatting using CSS styles. But for completeness of exposition, and because no small part of the no longer supported items, still found on old sites, so I'll go over it briefly, the most important of them. I guess each of you worked with some word processor program like the free ones, LibreOffice, Writer, or Apache OpenOffice, or Microsoft Word on. Microsoft Office, which is paid for. And in these programs the text is divided into separate paragraphs, or paragraphs in English. I don't know why he translated it for me twice, paragraphs. So, the text there is formatted and set to its size, color, font, alignment, indents, and more. A similar logic is used in the formatting of the text in the web page, but there are some differences in browsers versus word processors when working with the text. Here they are. First, it's not automatically supported break to a new line when there are no spaces or dashes in the text. That is, if you put one long merged text, occupying a few lines here, in the browser it will be displayed on one line, and when it exceeds the width on the browser line, on the screen, then in the lower part a horizontal scroll bar will appear. Here's an example adding the many times the letter O, for example. I start a normal sentence here. Now here I am writing a page and O, and you see how this FR continues as many symbols as there are. It's right here, in the editor, and in the browser we will see something like this. So, next is syllabification, which is not supported yet, except when the pre-tag is used. Now, In CSS3 there are some tags, which help to partially solve this problem, but this is not implemented in all browsers, so we'll get to that later. So the last one is that in the browser only one space can be seen. In the sense, as many spaces as possible right in the editor, the browser accepts only one space. And 10 and 20 spaces to write, the browser perceives it like this, 1. That's why it can't be turned on more than one space in a row. And to write more spaces in a row, you must use the special character, which is this. Thus, the second point is, text flow controls. These are the elements a part of which already mentioned, and they serve to help better management of the browser's text stream. The first such element is the paragraph element. This element serves to separate of the text into separate parts, paragraphs, and each such part shall be inserted between the opener and the closing tag of the P element. In other words, with each individual element P, a new paragraph is created and its text is put in the content of the element. By default, browsers leave one blank line before and after the paragraph. Here is an example, in which we will take two paragraphs of the text which we write here. We can look at them. I have colored them differently for clarity. Thus, it is very well seen, that for example here in the first paragraph we have distance, here 2 and here because the syllabification. Not supported in HTML automatically. All about porting, we have to format it manually. Now, there are some new elements in CSS3 related to this. In Mozilla Firefox there is already such support, but for the moment it is not yet, so to speak, in full and entire, and in all browsers to be able to do this. Paragraphs are blocks of elements, but only before that. Actually, I mean that and here, if I manually move the word between, then the distance to the right is decreased. Or here, if I move the word where, then you see the text coming quite tight. So as I said, the paragraphs are block elements. We will look at them more detail in the next chapter, and by default occupy the full width of the browser window. The paragraph element has an alignment attribute, which is used to align the text. Its syntax is as follows, as this attribute can takes 4 values that are used as standard in all programs. Align left, right, centered and bilateral. This attribute, however, no longer supported in HTML5. It is used there for this purpose, the style attribute. I will also show how to use it text alignment both ways, as for this purpose I will use the first example with the 2 paragraphs. In the first way, I'll use the old one align attribute. In the second way, I will show you how to be with use of the style attribute. And here's what will happen in practice. That's it for now on the paragraph. The next item is for passing on a new line, the element br. It serves to pass a new line, no closing tag, it's an empty element. As an example, we will insert a few such elements in the paragraphs, and here's what you get. We see here a whole empty row, here the text is on a new line. This element is often used. The next item is draw a horizontal line, HR, which also has no closing tag. It is a block element and takes up the entire row width. It also has several attributes: alignment, color shade, no shade, line thickness, line, and so on. I have given an example here with variations of this tag. Now, these attributes are also not supported in HTML5. In general, keep in mind that in HTML5 the idea is formatting exported to a separate file and using CSS, but I'm showing them because, as I said, you may come across them on old sites. So, then we go to another interesting element, the pre-element, pre-formatted text. The pre-element between its tags defines a block, where you can enter text, which looks the same in the browser as well as in the editor, that is, the previous formatting is preserved. It is mainly used for introducing poems or some other such cases. Here, for example, I have shown one of mine, a poem from my youth. There are secrets. And we see that the text appears in the same way in the editor and in the browser. The last tag we'll look at is currently the comment tag. Comments are a very important and necessary part from any programming language, and although it's not exactly a programming language, HTML is no exception. The comment syntax, however, is a little more strange and complex than other languages that I've come across. For example, in CSS it's like this, in Pascal it's like this. In many languages there is also such a comment, one line for example, and here the syntax is as follows: the comment starts with this character, then follows the text, which is commented out and complete with the following sign, low. For example, this line is a comment and it doesn't render in the browser, and it is only visible here. Comments are mainly for us, the authors of the HTML code, therefore they must be put before or to the important parts of the code, and only when necessary. That is, when this part of the code contains something more special. I have often seen comments of something that is obvious and has none point to comment. This should be avoided. Example, start of header, end of header. Once we have an opening element with divid equals header, or header tag in HTML5, it is obvious that this is where the header starts, and since there are no other nested elements, clearly it ends here. If we have multiple nested the elements, one in the other, then at many closing tags is more difficult to find out who corresponds to whom, and then it's good to put comments. Years ago the comments used to hide and not appear on the screen, the scripts, because there were browsers that were not recognizing JavaScript and showing its code on the screen, but in the modern ones browsers this has been fixed. Another application of the comment is to be ignored for now a given piece of code which we want to hide for now and not visible in the browser, for example, to test another option or approach. This will conclude this part. Best regards.